It was a chaotic night at the University of New Mexico, surrounding a visit from a conservative political commentator, Tomi Lahren.
Hi, everybody. Auntie speaks here. We're going to talk about a trend that's been going on for, like 5 years now, where you can't listen to your opponent speak. That if you don't agree with what someone else is saying, then you have a right to stop them from speaking. You have a right to whine and complain and basically bust things, burn things down, do whatever you want to stop offensive speech.
Who was scheduled to speak on campus Thursday night.
It was definitely a very large expression of their feelings and thoughts about the event that was taking place.
UNM student Maddie Pukait says the crowd of protesters was angry Lahren was a guest speaker for the UNM chapter of Turning Point USA. According to Pukait, protesters were upset Lahren was on campus during the start of Hispanic Heritage Month.
Oh, were you upset? You were upset that Tomi Lahren was showing up and speaking, so you have to yell and scream? Let's look at some beautiful footage of that yelling and screaming.
Shut it down! Shut it down! Shut it down!
This was the scene last night outside the sub ballroom. Protesters chanting to shut down the event as they're trying to get through a UNM police officer stationed outside the ballroom doors.
Down! Shut it down! Shut it!
Inside, another officer and organizers tried to hold the doors closed. State police were eventually called in. Organizers scrapped the speech early due to what they say were safety concerns.
This is not freedom of speech. We have a long tradition in this country of protests. But what you are doing here is called a heckler's veto. Why? Why is it called a heckler's veto? What is a heckler's veto? A heckler's veto is you scream, you rant, and you rave, and you pull fire alarms, so you have to leave the building. You cancel the speech. That is not freedom of speech. So what is freedom of speech? There is a thought on today's college campuses that freedom of speech does not include hate speech. Well, I hate to tell you this, but basically the only reason why we have the First Amendment, freedom of speech, is because of hate speech. That's it. Because who wants to cancel love speech? Do you see a lot of people running around trying to cancel love speech? No. You have to protect the speech you hate. I'm going to give you a wonderful example. Back in the 70s, back when the ACLU actually did defend freedom of speech, do you know who they defended? Do you know? Bunch of Nazis. If you don't know, the ACLU was founded by a bunch of Jewish people. And I believe, don't quote me on this, I believe some of them were like escapees from the Holocaust and stuff like that. So they were very concerned with freedom of speech because of what happened in the countries where they came from. So they knew that that if you allow one person's freedom of speech to be stopped, even if you hate them, that means your freedom of speech can be stopped. So what did they do? Well, a bunch of Nazis wanted to march down in Skokie. And Skokie was a community of Jewish people. A lot of them were survivors of the Holocaust. The ACLU fought the government to allow the Nazis to march. Now, you in today's world think that is awful. How could they have fought to let those Nazis march? Well, because if the Nazis don't get to march, then Tomi Lahren doesn't get to speak. Make sense? Let's listen to these protesters saying that their freedom of speech was stopped.
Protesters claim their right to free speech was trampled on because police would not allow them to attend the event. People here to see Fox News personality Tomi Lahren claim their right to speech was deprived when they crashed the event.
And basically started to bang and protest and yell against the wall of the ballroom, which the event was being held inside.
UNM says this hole in the wall was made by protesters and is, quote, investigating these incidents and will hold anyone who violated the law or university policies accountable.
So I love this. So their freedom of speech was impinged upon because they weren't let into the auditorium. I hate to tell you this is not free speech. Yeah, if you're yelling and screaming and busting things and screaming, shut it down, and pulling fire alarms, yeah, then you're not going to be let in. What don't you understand? That's not freedom of speech. That's not what an adult does. Do you know what an adult does? He walks into that auditorium, he sits down and listens to someone who he does not like anything that they're saying. And then at the end of the speech, he gets in line for question and answers. And typically, if it's a conservative, the people who disagree go first in line. That's kind of how conservative speakers usually work. And then you present your argument on why that person is completely and utterly wrong, why they're a bad person, why their thoughts are bad, why everything they say is bad. But you can't do that, can you? Because that's what an adult does. No, you like to yell and scream and say, they can't speak. I don't like their speech. They're hurting my feelings. Do you know what it's like for a conservative on a college campus? I want you to imagine just a moment. Every teacher you have, every administration, every person, you're afraid to say anything in a classroom because you're afraid that teacher is going to mark you down because you have conservative beliefs. Imagine what that's like holding that in for 4 years, 5 years. Do you know why conservatives know the arguments of the other side? Because pretty much if a conservative lives in society at all, we know all the arguments to the other side. We've had to listen to them over and over again. Before Fox News, the entire news media was the only news out there. Before YouTube, before anything. Well, yeah, YouTube can't get anything out there anymore because conservatives are now censored. But we know all of your arguments. We've had to listen to them. We have to work through the arguments in our mind, and then we have to defend against it if we don't believe what you believe. Do you see the difference? Imagine if a conservative yelled and screamed in a classroom or in an auditorium when presented with ideas that they disagree with. There'd be yelling and screaming everywhere. This is not how people move forward in society. This does not. You do not have a right not to hear opinions of others. You do not have a right not to be offended. You do not have a right to yell and scream and cancel an event. You do not have that right.
The conservative commentator has stirred up controversy in the past with statements about the Black Lives Matter movement and immigration. In a statement, UNM says, quote, the University of New Mexico is committed to the principles of free speech and values its role as a public square for debate.
You don't like her opinions on Black Lives Matter and immigration. Okay. You cannot like her views. To tell you the truth, like I said before, I don't particularly like Tomi Lahren. It's just, what are you going to do? You have people who represent your side of things and sometimes you don't agree with them either. Okay. But that's okay. It is okay to disagree. It is not okay to yell and scream. And University of New Mexico. Okay. Why has this been happening for 5 years? It is the fault of the university. You say that you want to be a platform for free speech. Do you want to know how to solve this? Do you want to know how to solve this and make sure nothing happens? You make an announcement before the speech that anybody who yells and screams, anybody who breaks anything, anybody who tries to stop the speech will be expelled immediately. Do you know what? All of this would stop. They would still protest. They would be outside with their placards and they could chant outside, not in the lobby to disturb the speech. And that would be totally fine. You wouldn't see one conservative that would complain about that at all. But you cannot allow this to continue. Conservatives basically spend 4 years on college campus never hearing their side of the story, ever. And you can pretty much go to most college students and ask them what a conservative believes. They have no clue. All they think is that conservatives are racist and they're fascist, which is basically impossible if you're a conservative. I'm going to do a video on why, if you're on the right, you cannot be a fascist. It is impossible. You cannot be authoritarian on the right. It's impossible. Why? Why is it impossible? Because we believe in small government. If there's small government, then there can be no authoritarians. It's impossible. Okay, guys. So we need to, the adults need to stand up. Okay. And I've said this on many videos. Where are the adults in the room? And going off my last video, look below for what Dennis Prager said about women. And we can't have people's feelings hurt, that women are ruining society. I'm kind of with Dennis Prager on this, because there used to be an adult that would stand up and say, no, you are going to be expelled if you disrupt a speech. And that's the way it goes. Okay, guys. So like, comment, and subscribe. I'm trying to get this channel off the ground. I'm not quite sure if I'm going to be able to do it, because my videos like get a bunch of views and then all of a sudden it stops. So I don't know what's gonna, I don't know. We're going to see what happens. All right, guys. Thank you so much. We'll see you on the next one.